Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And right now where I am, it is 2024. The year is 2024, and it is in fact February 2024. So we are well on our way into this new year. But if it's okay with you, I'd like to today, on this occasion, begin a conversation with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2024. And so 2024 so far, I think, is off to a very strong start in terms of releases of films from the Criterion Collection, this great label of releases on DVD and Blu-ray and 4K, and also the Criterion Channel, their own streaming services. And so, in association with Janus Films, and so the Criterion Collection, I think, is a very exciting label. I am a fan of the Criterion Collection. I have been for some time. Because for a number of reasons that I've tried to articulate over the course of this YouTube channel. But I think one of the strong reasons for me has always been the lineup of films and titles, which continues to provide to me a type of continuation or a sort of dynamic engagement with my own cinema journey. And so I'm always excited to watch or rewatch, as the case may be, the films that are released on the recent release schedule of the Criterion Collection. And so I have been doing this for a number of years. Throughout the course of this YouTube channel, in fact. So I think, yes, for quite a number of years now, you and I, my dear friends, have been discussing each of the new releases as they have come out, or more or less as they've come out. And so if you are okay with this, I'd like to continue on with this cinema journey, as it were. And so that means that you and I, start our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2024. And so if that is okay with you, my dear friends, let us begin, therefore, at the beginning. Because at the start of January 2024, the Criterion Collection made a release, or I should say re-release, of a set which already existed in the Criterion Collection in this remarkable, phenomenal Blu-ray set at spine number 782. And the set had 3 feature films, each with its own individual spine number. And so now, on this occasion of January 2024, the Criterion Collection has re-released this, but this time employing the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray format. And so I think there are a number of interesting discussion points that one can make, and I'll try to make in terms of my own subjective viewpoint regarding the way in which the films look now in terms of this new, most recent release made by Criterion in terms of the employing of the 4K format, as regarding also in comparing to how it might have looked in the Blu-ray format, or how it does look in the Blu-ray format. So we'll try to make some points along the way with respect to that. But before I move on any further, let me say that the set itself is right here. This is the set, and it is the Apu trilogy. It is known collectively as the Apu trilogy. And this is a set of, or a cycle of 3 films, which is from the filmmaker Satyajit Ray. And so each film has its own individual case and its own individual spine number, and its own disc or set of discs in the case of the 4K plus Blu-ray, and also its set of supplements. And so I think what I'd like to propose to do, if it's okay, is maybe talk about each of the films individually in their own video. But then at the end, with a separate video, perhaps give my remarks on the booklet and the overall remarks on the packaging, as well as other aspects of this this release in terms of the physical media components or characteristics of this. So let's focus on those comments in a separate video that will come maybe a little bit at the end. But before we get there, my dear friends, again, I'd like to focus on each of these films, and each in their own way is a remarkable, majestic, sweeping engagement of cinema. Let me say also, before I begin, that this set, or the set as it had been released by Criterion some years back in the Blu-ray format, and now with its reemergence, I am reminded of just how landmark and how important this set really is in terms of the films that are being showcased, in terms of the presentation, background, and history, but also in terms of the weight and the supremely profound way in which these films have affected so many people across the world and in terms of generations. And I find myself included in that group of people who have been so affected and so emotionally moved by these films. And this set from January 2024 reminded me of just how moved I am by these works, such that I could say that, yes, indeed, this set, the Oppo Trilogy, is perhaps one of the most important sets in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog. And so I'm so honored and thrilled to see its re-return, in a manner of speaking, to Criterion's physical media history to start off the year, January 2024. And specifically, therefore, I'd like to now focus our attention, if I may, on one of the films which is included in this so-called trilogy of films. And this is the film which comes first in the chronology, and indeed very monumental and important in the context of Satyajit Ray, and we'll touch upon those points a little bit later in the discussion. But before we get to that, my dear friends, let me first say what the film is. And this is the film which, taken out of the box in its individual sleeve, is also given its individual spine number at spine number 783. And this is a film which is described as being from the year 1955. And the name of the filmmaker is Satyajit Ray. And the name of the film is, and please pardon me for my very poor pronunciation of the language. I hope you can forgive me, but I will do my best. The name of the film is PATHER PANCHALI. This is the work, this is the extraordinary work, which is described as being from the year 1955, and it is from the filmmaker, Satyajit Ray. Satyajit Ray is the director of this film. Satyajit Ray is also the screenwriter, or the writer of the screenplay, and based upon the novel, PATHER PANCHALI, by Bibhutibhushan Bandyopadhyay, or Bibhutibhushan Banerjee. And the cast, the extraordinary cast, includes, for instance, Kanu Banerjee and Karuna Banerjee and Subir Banerjee and Uma Dasgupta and others. And as members of this family, that is at the very heart and soul and the very center of this work, and indeed other films to follow that we might follow in the course of these characters as we come to know and meet them and love them and really become part of in terms of their experiences. And that is one of the great strengths of this work, which is the film, and please pardon me for my poor pronunciation of the language. I hope you can forgive me. The name of the work is PATHER PANCHALI. Wow. So there's so much to say, I think, about PATHER PANCHALI. We'll talk a little bit later about the presentation of this film as it sits in this now current iteration of the Criterion Collection physical media release catalog. This is a January 2024 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition, so 2 discs. I'll just open it up right here just to let you know about that. There are some points that I do want to make in terms of my own subjective viewpoint on the way in which it looks now in terms of the 4K and how it had always looked before in terms of the monumental release of this. And I do want to stress this, just how monumental this release of PATHER PANCHALI has been by Criterion and the people behind the restoration. And this, I'm reminded of just how monumental that was and that is, given this now current release of this. So, yeah, I might be getting ahead of myself, but I really strongly, I can't emphasize enough just how important these films are and how incredibly moving these films are, and PATHER being a great example of this. So if you have not yet seen these films, if you have not yet seen PATHER, or indeed maybe the other films in the what is known as the Opus trilogy, now with this new release by Criterion, or this re-release of films by Criterion in 2024, now is a wonderful opportunity. And I was just reminded and struck by, again, the depth of the soul, the emotional core of this work, PATHER. I've seen it a number of times before, and every time I am floored, I am shaking in terms of the way in which it has this effect upon me as I watch it. And I think perhaps if I were to try to describe it, then I can maybe go towards the plot or story structure of this work. And if we were to focus on the plot or story structure of this work, PATHER, I think we could focus in on the family unit, the family structure, or the characters that occupy this really intricate and intimate set of emotional relationships and familial relationships, set against the backdrop of what I understand is rural Bengal, a Bengali village rural life around the start of the 20th century, and so the early half of the 20th century. And so we have a number of people in this familial dynamic. We have the patriarch figure. This is the Kanu Banerjee character. Harihar, and then we have the matriarch figure, the mother character. This is the Karuna Banerjee character. And then we have the elderly figure, the elderly auntie figure as well, plus children. And we have the young daughter, Durga. And then also you have, as we enter into this world of PATHER, we understand that there is a new member of the family that we are introduced to immediately. And this will become part of the fabric of this family life that we see in terms of the passage of time and years and stories. And that is the character of Opus, the young boy. And so this forms a type of family unit. And already from the outset, we see so many moments of, say, family life. When I say family life, I mean those wonderfully emotional, perhaps even cryptic, and maybe almost unspoken moments of joy, and those little maybe glances that are caught between characters, especially even in the early stages of the film, as we see the children growing, but still in this wonderful effervescent nature of adolescence. We see them sharing glances with each other in this playful, witty, and wry way. And we see also maybe the elderly auntie figure, perhaps slyly and perhaps maybe to the chagrin of the mother, the matriarch figure, probably encouraging some of this seemingly outward activity that perhaps is not necessarily becoming in terms of society, culture, and etiquette, at least from the mother's standpoint. And so here we have already a sense of the playful and wry and witty, and perhaps too we have the hopes and dreams of the patriarch, the fatherly figure, which seem to be set in a world of arts and literature. And the theater, but these ideas of hopes and dreams are always pinned down by the what one might call the harshness of the realities in terms of making ends meet, financial situations, dire straits, as it were, because we understand that this family isn't necessarily the most well-off of the family households that we see in this rural community. They are, to a certain degree, relatively speaking, somewhat of a degree of being in a situation of impoverishment, of poverty. And so this also wears on the face, in particular, of the mother figure. And so we see, or we understand, or we can intuit, or we can perhaps almost immediately latch on to the issues that seem to be both short-term but also perhaps lingering and long-term, that being the well-being financially and also emotionally and spiritually of the younger generation, these two children that the mother is trying to bring up in a way that is infused and anchored with a sense of, say, dignity and also well-being for the future, despite perhaps what the mother might see as being certain, say, familial setbacks, or perhaps certain aspects that might be surprising or engaging or otherwise, bringing to the fore various, say, clashes between family, and therein lies I think, the wonderfully rendered and I think very true to form relationships, say, between the mother and the elderly auntie figure, who seems almost to have perhaps an underlying streak of mischievousness, but also her own sense of dignity and spirit, and also independence, as well as being feeling perhaps the feeling perhaps the nature and the ways of age and time and years. And I think that comes true to form, especially when we see how her state in the family is juxtaposed to, say, the members of the younger generation, the youngest generation, the children. And this brings us to the beautiful characters that are Apu and Durga. This is the young boy and the elderly sister, and then we see them in certain stages of their adolescence and their life, and they are together. But we also see specific aspects of their own, say, spiritual and physical and emotional upbringing, which may or may not be coming into contradiction or clashing with the circumstances around them. So this is, I think, shown forth in wonderful illustrations of the film. For instance, the young daughter, Durga's own, say, experiences in terms of a way in which maybe there is a mischievous nature to her, but it's very playful, and it's very witty, and it's also very warm. There's also a sense of pride that might lash out in maybe flashes of, say, temper, but that temper might or might not be, say, misunderstood by people around her, especially her mother. And there's also this element of as I mentioned, certain degrees of poverty that are expressed, especially when compared to other households that we meet to some degree throughout the course of the film, because we understand that there's a neighboring household that is, relatively speaking, very well off, and that sets forth a very interesting subplot involving a little trinket, and whether or not a little trinket may or may not have been stolen. This also brings to the fore this idea of parenting, and the joys and difficulties of parenting, especially from the context of the mother figure, trying to rear her children in a way that has a sense of grace and nobility, but understanding too that there are always moments where things will not go as planned, or things, or the children will be children. And I think that has a wonderful myriad perspectives, which I think is so true to life from the parent's point of view, or particularly the mother's point of view, because we understand that the father, her figure, seems to be somewhat distant, perhaps aloof, maybe unintentionally so, perhaps quote-unquote head in the clouds type of romantic idea about his own aspirations as an artist. That may or may not be taking his focus and attention away from the ground level needs of the family, where the mother is, and thus from the myriad perspectives, going back to what I said earlier, children will be children. That wonderful, playful, witty, frustrating, a beautiful way that life unfurls, and how we, or people within the family unit, react. And they may react in ways that might be bursts of anger, fights. There might be moments of regret. And when those little moments, those little beautiful, tender, ephemeral moments transform into moments of, say, seeking and learning, and even moments of life and death, the grave moments of gravitas, heaviness and weight, because of the significance of the life actions. Certain circumstances have grave consequences to them in this world of PANCHALI. When we as viewers experience these moments through the experiences of these characters that we have come to know, we understand that each has their own, say, set of strengths, each has their own set of frailties. But that is also another way to show a sort of humane side, a sort of humanistic lens that I think Satyajit Ray and company show us. And I mean this too in the way in which the film engages with a sense of poetry, a cinematic poetry, through the actual nature and landscape itself. I don't know how to explain. There is a way in which uh, maybe if one were to read a description of the film PANCHALI, one might get the sense, just based on reading the description without watching the film first, one might get a sense that reading about the synopsis of the story, that this film might be set in a type of quote unquote gritty, quasi documentary feel, a cinema verite like feel, realism type of feel to it. And while there are elements, I think, that rely on the landscape of realism, in terms of the location setting, the locales, the use of nature, and the actual use of say non-professional actors, etc., which will be remarked upon in some of the supplements of this. I mean, there's no doubt that there are elements of quote unquote realism that are employed to combine the overall story structure, the landscape structure of this. But there are also moments of what one might call cinematic poetry, the Satyajit Ray poetry. And that's the way in which he uses the grammar and metaphors of, grammar of components of realism, cinematic, that are expressed cinematically. And he uses it in a way to, again, highlight moments of almost in a transcendental nature, the way in which life shifts from one moment to another. Those shifts might seem quite almost meager and quite almost instantaneous and perhaps ephemeral, and they might disappear in a moment's notice. But in fact, they hold so much weight, and they can be as seemingly minute as, say, the way in which some kind of maybe some plants gather on the surface of the water, or maybe a bug as it flies from one leaf to another, or maybe the way in which the wind hits the reeds of plants, or the way in which even smoke bubbles up to form part of the landscape as a train passes, and these sorts of things, or even the way that rain hits the face of characters that are outside in the rain, caught in the rain, a type of monsoon effect. And these show within the capsule, or encapsulated within the cinematic moments, yes, elements of what one might call senses of cinematic realism, because these are moments that are caught in a state of nature, almost like the camera is fixed and capturing moments as they are playing out in sort of real, natural time, as it were. But they are moments that are also infused with a sense of beauty and grace, and a type of significant story beat meaning. Because we realize as we watch and rewatch these moments, when we rewatch and rewatch and rewatch again works like PANCHALI, that when we come across these, that means to us that even something as the pitter-patter of rain means so much in terms of the significant sweeps and ebbs and flows of the lives that are being affected by that rain, or maybe even something that is as simple and as elegant and as I say, ephemeral as a drop in a small body of water, and that drop which ripples, but then the ripples slowly fade until everything is quiet and still again. There is so much meaning to those moments, thus giving rise to, I think, what one might call a sense of the cinematic poetry that is in the hands of Satyajit Ray. There's something quite magical about it, but something that never, say, exceeds or betrays the sense of the humble and truly earnest roots of where the story comes from, and where those roots that I think Satyajit Ray and company are really acknowledging and paying homage and respect to, that being a source of sort of the source of the feeling of true to life nature that I think is at the very heart of this, both in terms of the story of PANCHALI and the way it is shot, or the way in which the circumstances in which this film is being made. So there's that wonderful, I think, almost way in which this film straddles that line between a sense of reality on the one hand, but a sense of seemingly infusing moments of reality with something that is almost unspoken. And that, I think, if you see those moments in succession, that is that is, in a nutshell, what one might call one's reaction to watching a film like PATHER. And you see so many of those moments, and you see them over and over again. And then what's wonderful about moments like that is that they're set forth, and again, in the context of this family unit. So that means you can look at it from different perspectives and see it from different viewpoints. They might change depending on what viewpoint one adopts, given one viewing of the film. And that makes for even much more rich and engaging and nuanced and perhaps even ambiguous viewing, which make for even more of a throwaway into touching sort of the hearts and souls of the people that we are meeting along the way as we watch this film, PANCHALI. There's also, I think, something to be said about the way in which this film touches upon certain socio-political and cultural, say, maybe not norms is the right word, but certain tones or styles. One can call it universal, and I think it's often been described as having a sense of universal flow to it and accessibility to it because of the way in which I think the family unit touches upon, or the characters that we come to know in PATHER really touch upon a kind of they really hit a nerve, and I mean that in a positive way. I've never been to this part of the world, never, but I feel like I know exactly what it is these characters are going through in terms of the little day-to-day moments, the little frustrations that they have, feeling hungry when seeing someone else eating at the table, or the mother feeling frustrated or perhaps embarrassed after some slight has occurred, or some faux pas has occurred with Durga and the community, etc. Or maybe something of the way in which Durga and Apu are encouraging each other in that wonderful brother-sister relationship that they have. So there are moments, I think, that have that universality of and accessibility that make for, I think, immediate understanding, despite maybe not necessarily being familiar with the area, and that's definitely true for me. So I feel that way in terms of the universality of this. But there's also in which this is very much, I think, reflective of certain cultural points. This is one of the great strengths about the Criterion booklet, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, but there's a wonderful essay here which I think focuses on this point, about reminding us about this film being, this is by Girish Shambhu, Behind the Universal. And the point of this essay, or one of the points of this great essay, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but let me just bring it up in the context of PANCHALI, which is that we are also reminded that this is very much a Bengal story. We are reminded about how the Bibhitibhushan Bonaparte or Bibhitibhushan Banerjee novel, PATHER was very popular and is very popular, and how this formed part of the reason why Satyajit Ray wanted to make this story or part of the story in the first place, and how it had a great sort of critical and widespread success when it was made. And so that suggests that there is a cultural connection that can be had with this. And it is also, I think, meant to be a certain aspect of something that's being represented. I don't think it's meant to be emblematic of an entire population, or an entire country or nation writ large. I mean, I think you can get a sense of that within the folds of the film itself. We understand that there are many households in this community. We understand that many households have different situations depending on their lots in life. You know, the story of Durga and Apu is fairly different. We can glean from, say, other characters, say Durga's friends that we come to meet a little bit throughout the film, or maybe the neighbors who seem to be in a different, maybe financial situation than her family is. So we can understand just by watching, or perhaps by watching the film itself, we can understand that there are different folds of society and culture that are within the frame and also beyond the frame. So I don't think, I think there are enough clues or enough hints in the film to give us, the viewers, a sense of perhaps this being one of many stories. But being that it is one of many stories, it is still one of many stories among which has a certain resonance and connection. And that is true with how the novel has been reacted to, and that is true, I think, in how the film has been reacted to. So essays like this that are included in the Criterion booklet, I think, are great reminders of this. So PANCHALI, if I were to try to round out my feelings about this, it's one of those films where, for me, when I first saw it, And I saw it, I remember, this was prior to the Criterion release, and it was a really great marvel to be able to watch it. But it was on I think it was, I was younger, and I was in my late teens or early 20s, I think, when I first saw Pather Panchali. And it struck me, but I must say that as I get older, it strikes me in different ways. I think it's one of those films where I think when I was younger, I really gravitated towards the younger characters, the Durga character, Aputra, the characters, and I could focus on their stories, maybe sympathize with their stories a little bit more than I could say the mother figure or the father figure. But as I get older, I find myself maybe slowly in my own personal life, maybe slowly finding myself or realizing or being reminded that I am closer in age and situation to, say, the mother figure and the father figure than I am, say, to Durga and Opu. And so now I find myself maybe focusing in on the story of the father and the mother and the elderly auntie figure, as well as still being reminded of the joys of Durga and Opu. So that has one of those. This is my way of saying that Pather Panchali is one of those films where I think you can watch it as time passes, and you can really tie it to moments in your own life. I feel that way. And I feel like it feels like something new every time I see it because of the benefit of being that much older. So I can feel like my own, say, life experiences seeping in and guiding me in one way or another. And I think there's a kind of magical feeling that I feel that this film seems to inhabit when I watch it, and has that real strong way of capturing me in that way. And again, I'm just reminded again just how I felt about it when I first saw it and being engaged with it. But it takes on different dimension as one rewatches it and one gets older, which I think is the best recipe for having a film in this physical media format. You know, the benefit is you can, of course, watch it many times to come, which is, I hope, the case for you if you ever decide to watch or rewatch this phenomenal work of art, which is Pather Panchali. And we'll talk about other aspects because the Criterion collection does have some great supplemental points that talk a little bit about the background and the production values of this. Just touching very briefly now, we understand that this was one of the most ultimate independent cinema projects in terms of the ability or inability at the time to secure funding to be able to finish the project. So it took a number of years to get off the ground. So it was almost the drive of the strength of will of Satyajit Ray that this film ever got made in the first place. It's one of those great stories that you hear every now and again about the creation of a work of art that is truly an independent film. And in that way, this has this independent drive with Satyajit Ray's passion for this work at the heart and center, as well as the showcasing of the great artists that are part of the landscape, undoubtedly, in terms of the camera work. And as I mentioned, there are some brilliant camera flourishes that show a delicacy and charm and craft. Subhatra Mitra's photography is now it's world renowned. So we get a sense of this here. And then also the musical landscape with the now world famous, iconic theme, and many themes, in fact, that are occupying the landscape of Pather Panchali, provided by Ravi Shankar. So, and then we are reminded too of the brilliance and grace and genius, multi-tiered genius levels that we're talking about when we think about the artist Satyajit Ray in terms of not just a filmmaker, but also the literary background, artistic background, and the focus and composure and musical background and all sorts that we understand are coming together to form many points along his great filmography, the start of which is this work in terms of his director status, that being the film Pather Panchali. The Criterion Collection has re-released this film, Pather Panchali, and this is part of the box set, which is the Oppo trilogy. And I say re-release because, if you recall, this set had been released or is currently actually existing in the Blu-ray set, which is what I have here. And this was first printing 2015, so some years back. Again, at spine number 782. And at this time, if you recall, this had been based upon what were at the time brand new restorations, new digital 4K digital restorations of the work, and it was a big deal for reasons that I'll try to highlight here momentarily. So on this occasion of this year, 2024, we are getting a re-release of this set, the Oppo trilogy, and included in which, of course, is the film PANCHALI. And part of that is the 4K restorations. Now, I am referring to the notes which are included as part of the Great Booklet, and here the notes are quite detailed. Starting on page 38 of the booklet, there's some notes about the restorations. And in fact, this had been the catalog of notes that were part of the earlier 2015 release from some years back. So in fact, what we're getting is the same description, or almost identical description, with a few minor edits here and there, but the same description that we are getting now is in fact the same description which we got for the booklet from the earlier 2015 Blu-ray release. So the restorations are, I understand, therefore, the same, or the materials, or the restoration, the presentation is based upon the same restoration that we had seen previously. So we are getting, therefore, the application of the 4K UHD technology for purposes of the disc itself, but the restoration materials, I understand, are the same. And in fact, when I put the 4K UHD in the player, I noticed that there didn't seem to be any marked or noticeable change or difference of a significant degree. There didn't seem to be any huge leap or jump from how I was used to watching the film, say, on the previous Blu-ray, which is what I have here, and this new 4K disc, which is what I have in the player. So I would therefore say that in our conversation of the 4K disc and how the film looks in the 4K UHD disc of PATHER, to my eyes and to my ears, it looks to be there doesn't seem to be any huge difference to my eyes or my ears when I watch this film in the 4K disc versus how I have been watching this film on the Blu-ray from Criterion. Okay, so that therefore might make the subject of maybe getting the set, maybe it might lead people to question whether or not to get the set, especially if you already have the Blu-ray set before. And please keep in mind, the Blu-ray set is miraculous and spectacular. So if you already have the Blu-ray set from 2015, then chances are you may not necessarily need this set, at least for the purposes of PATHER. We'll of course carry on this conversation when we talk about the other two films in the so-called trilogy of films known as here the Oppo trilogy. But for purposes of this film, PATHER, there might not necessarily be a huge leap and jump in terms of the application of the 4K technology or a new restoration, etc., that in those terms might not necessarily make it enough reason to opt for this new 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition from Criterion from January 2024. Okay, so I understand that point. Be that as it may, and I really want to emphasize this, be that as it may, I just want to keep in mind a couple of things, which is this release is, again, a huge reminder of just how fortunate we are to be able to say that we are able to watch these films. I mean, I'm sure this is a conversation that is, of course, not exclusive to the state of things with regard to PATHER and the other films in the Oppo trilogy, because we understand this nature of film being very delicate, and it's prone to many things, both internal factors and also external factors, of storage and care and accidents and the like, which may cause films to be lost to time. And that's definitely the case for many films. And so, in fact, when we are talking about films now, I think we're talking about a relatively speaking, a small percentage of films that are able to, quote-unquote, survive over the course of time in history. But there was a moment in time when it was indeed kind of accepted that we might not be able to watch Pather Panchali or any of the Apu trilogy films in any, say, a restored state, or perhaps it was something that was we had to watch what was surviving, but everything else was more or less lost to time or to accident or to circumstances beyond people's control, force majeure, etc. But thanks to the wonderful restoration work that is again highlighted in the booklet here, again starting around page 39 of this booklet, there was a lot of work that went into this restoration work, including participation and efforts made by the Criterion collection and the restoration lab, according to the notes here. So that, I think, alone is well worth keeping in mind. And I think in that spirit, I am now so happily reminded of just how close we were to not being able to sort of watch these films in a type of glorious way that we are now able to watch them, or we have been able to watch them for some years now, thanks to great releases such as this Criterion release starting from the Blu-ray from some years back. And so if this makes it an enticing enough inducement for people to want to at least pursue this in the 4K format, please go ahead. There's nothing, I think, negative about the 4K presentation or how it looks in the 4K disc on this. On the contrary, I think it looks just as vibrant and fresh and alive and filled with a lot of vigor. You know, I mentioned moments of the natural setting that are used as a type of Satyajit Ray cinematic poetry, and those are so vibrant and alive when you see them on your 4K setup, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's brilliant, it's glorious, and they were always glorious, I would say, in terms of the Blu-ray setup or the case may be. So I don't think there's any maybe one format or another that I would say would be preferred. But I know that there are a lot of people out there who might say prefer one format or the other, if you have that option available to you. So if you are in that category and you have not yet seen, or you have not yet gotten, say, a copy of the set, Apu trilogy, and specifically this film Pather Panchali, then I would say for you this is a wonderful opportunity to get this. This is an absolutely wonderful opportunity to get this. I think you're going to get a bunch of films that are part of the fabric of history, that themselves are so resonant and so emotionally powerful. Even now, many years after they've been made, they're still so relevant and so direct and so powerful even now. Watching Pather Panchali, you're captured just within the opening moments of it. It just sweeps you along throughout its various threads of family life. It is absolutely beautiful, enchanting, and wonderful that way. And if you want to combine that experience with, say, the application of the 4K technology as you have it in your own, say, home viewing setup, then by all means, I think this is great for you. It's a great opportunity to get it. What are you waiting for, right? Because again, if you get it in the 4K UHD January 2024 release, or if you already have it in the previous Blu-ray release, you're still getting something that is such a great reminder of the important work of restoration, for films like this. So I look at this release as a kind of reminder of that, and therefore I'm very grateful, and I'm always reminded too of just where the state of things were prior to releases like this from 2015 and beyond. So in that way, I find myself very grateful for that. So at the end of the day, therefore, if you already have your Blu-ray set of this, then chances are I think you're going to be very happy with that already. So you don't necessarily need to get the 4K release, in my view. But if you are, say, in need of engaging with works, applying the 4K format or the 4K UHD format in terms of your hardware, and if that's your preferred mode of film consumption, then by all means, this set might be worth checking out. Or if you are new to the world of Pather Panchali, or new to the world of Satyajit Ray, and you are just eager for that opportunity to jump in and watch the films, I think the set, the January 24 re-release, is a great reminder of just how wonderful this set is. And you'll still get your option in terms of if you want to go for the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray experience, or if you want to go for the Blu-ray set in terms of, say, differences in pricing and also your own specific say, needs and requirements for you and your own cinema viewing experiences. So I'm trying to make that as open-ended as possible. I'm sorry if I don't sound more definitive, but I do want to say that for me, I don't know if it's necessarily a computation of what is quote unquote better or not better. But for me, especially in the context of this film, it seems like the question for me or not the question, but the statement for me is that this is yet another reminder, some years after the fact, but still another great reminder of just how lucky I feel like I am still being alive right now and being able to say that I'm able to watch PANCHALI in this state, whether it was in my the Blu-ray box set from some years back or whether it's now in January 2024 and beyond. I am very, very lucky to be able to say that I can watch PANCHALI in this format, in this viewing. So, which wasn't the case when I was younger. So I'm very, very fortunate indeed. So that way I want to be sure that I'm maintaining my sense of gratitude. And so trying to be as open-ended and as wide a berth as possible with regard to this. So sorry if it's not more definitive, but I hope you can understand. And my comments will be somewhat similar when we talk about the other two films. But just to let you know, this is a wonderful opportunity, again, for those who are engaged with the 4K UHD format, or those who have not yet seen these films. This is a great opportunity to get the set again, or get the set, or for those who already have the Blu-ray and who are very content with this, I think you're already in good hands with this Blu-ray set. So I think at the end of the day, everyone wins. So, and especially if you get the chance to watch PANCHALI, whether it's for the first time or for the second, third, or fourth time, or etc., whatever the case may be. This is really a wonderful occasion. So I'm glad for this reminder from Criterion. Next, let us speak about the supplements which can be found together with this work, PANCHALI. So what I have is I have now the Blu-ray disc in the player. And so you might notice that there is the addition in the menu of the Blu-ray disc when compared to the earlier 4K UHD disc. You might notice that in addition to some of the items that were found on that 4K UHD disc menu, we have some additional points such as supplements here. So as per usual with 4K UHD plus Blu-ray releases from Criterion, what Criterion does is it has the feature on either the 4K UHD disc or the Blu-ray disc. And in this case for PANCHALI, my understanding is that there is no difference in terms of the presentation materials upon which those discs were based for the film itself, but you do have access to watching the films either on one disc or the other, your choice. But then not on the 4K UHD disc, but only on the Blu-ray disc will you then find the supplements that are to be found together with PANCHALI. Once again, we have 3 films in the Apu trilogy, the first of which being PANCHALI. There are supplements that are linked to this film, as well as supplements that are linked respectively to each of the other 2 films. And so when you go from film to film to film, you'll be able to watch the supplements that are combined or made available together with those 2 films respectively. So when we talk about those other 2 films in their separate video discussions, we'll talk about the supplements that are found with those discs. But for now, what can we find together with or included with the supplements to be found with the film PANCHALI? Well, we press, and these appear to be, based on my understanding, the same supplements which we were able to find in the earlier set. So I don't think we're getting anything new. At least I didn't find anything that was new. But that's okay, because there are a number of wonderful spots to talk about with respect to these supplements, which were found before and now are found again. So again, these, just generally speaking, are a wonderful arena to be able to explore the world of PANCHALI. And I should point out that these supplements that are found with PANCHALI, they are, based on my experience, they are PANCHALI specific. So we're not necessarily talking about specific points in the other films of the Apu trilogy. So if you're watching them for the first time, you don't necessarily have to worry about spoilers, but perhaps I would say, as my my gentle recommendation would be, even with that point notwithstanding, my gentle suggestion to you would be to watch all of the films in the Oppo trilogy first. Watch PANCHALI and then watch the other two films. Again, we'll talk about them separately. We'll watch the films, and then after you've watched all the films, then my suggestion is to go back and watch the supplements that are accompanying each of these. So I think that might call for a really interesting experience, because there are certain echoes that are being made that resonate, I think, especially with a foundational understanding of what the other two films are in the trilogy. So that's my gentle recommendation. But that being said, this is linked to Pather Panchali, so I think I appreciate that very much. So what do we have? The first is A Long Time on the Little Road. And this is approximately 14 minutes. And it's described here as, in 1957, director Satyajit Ray wrote an article for the British magazine Sight and Sound about the making of Pather Panchali. Shortly thereafter, film critic Gideon Bachman recorded Ray reading his account aloud. That audio recording is presented here. So this is really remarkable. This is, in a sense, or not a sense, it is, in the director's own words. So it's almost like a direct interview with the director. And reading, again, as it's described here, reading aloud from sort of a written work. And so Satyajit Ray's voice, Satyajit Ray's words, you get a sense of the rhythm and the timbre of his voice. Very commanding. And very effective voice, I think, which has been remarked upon elsewhere by other artists and actors who've worked with him. And there's the brilliance of recall in talking about the circumstances involved with the genesis of the project Pather Panchali, and the relative inexperience in terms of cinema and cinema grammar and filmmaking, and the limited resources, both in terms of funding and also a type of maybe formal cinema education. But that didn't stop Satyajit Ray and company from really pursuing this project, even needing to wait years and years for the next injection of funding to be made available before being able to shoot that next part of the film, etc. So that degree of patience and also perseverance, I think, is one of the great hallmarks of Satyajit Ray. And again, his truly maverick, independent filmmaking artistic spirit, which is, you get a sense of this here and elsewhere, boundless, absolutely boundless. And it's a wonderful miracle in more ways than one, this creation of this work. One of the great stories being the behind the scenes, and how this film was made with a lot of heart and limited resources. And it really, in many ways, it sort of changed the landscape of cinema forever. So there's a sort of perseverance and a period of months and years of waiting in order to be able to, for funding, in order to be able to pursue this and finish this. And then also, Satyajit Ray speaks to here a little bit about aspects of theory and practice. So it gets a little bit in terms of, how should I put it? There's a way in which he's describing what he understood this idea of film theory to be, or references to this idea of montage and maybe a Soviet cinema. He makes reference here to Doshenko and Earth, but he also makes the point where it's not the theorist. The theory provides the basis, but in practice, there is a way in which the earth and the soil is not that of Doshenko's earth, but rather the rural Bengal rural environment that is at the environmental heart and the setting of Pather Panchali. So this is in an interesting way a kind of maybe a subtle, or perhaps not so subtle, reference, and maybe a kind of maybe a way in which Pather Panchali or Satyajit Ray's discussion here is really supporting what the thesis statement is of the essay here, Behind the Universal, from Girish Shambhu, which I mentioned a little bit earlier in the discussion. So this idea of a kind of cultural link that is so deeply, inherently part of the fundamental part of the very earth and soil that's being used to tell the story. So theory and practice, which I think, and I don't mean to suggest that there's any kind of, say, clash between them. I think Satyajit Ray's words here suggest, on the contrary, there's a way in which of maybe adaptability and this idea of a need for learning and education on the one hand, but also seeing how that can be applied based on the circumstances, because the circumstances are very unique and also very much part of Satyajit Ray's experience and also the story of PATHER, PANCHALI, etc. And then speaking of the story, he speaks here a little bit about the challenges and the genesis in terms of taking this book, the Bibiti Pushon Banerjee book, and trying to adapt it, as being a very popular work, and trying to engage with it in terms of the visual style, and trying to create the cinema language that would be able to relate, and I think it becomes a very relatable work, which describes just how critically and commercially successful the film was and is. So this is, I think, a great entry point into the world of Satyajit Ray for many reasons. A discussion of the making of in certain aspects of PATHER, PANCHALI, but also from the voice of Satyajit Ray, from the words of Satyajit Ray himself. So it's great to get that sense and get to hear the actual voice. It's a wonderful interview indeed, or an audio excerpt indeed. So that's what's up first. It's approximately 14 minutes. Next we have Sumitra Chatterjee, and this is actor Sumitra Chatterjee's first film role was as the adult Apu in 1959's Apu Shansar, and he would go on to appear in 13 more of Satyajit Ray's films. In the following short interview, produced by the Criterion Collection in 2013, Chatterjee recalls the impact that PATHER, PANCHALI had on him and his fellow Bengalis. So this is approximately 7 minutes. So the actor, Chatterjee, very famous actor, legendary actor, in this great interview. We will speak about his performance in a later film in the Apu trilogy. So he does not appear directly in the film PATHER, PANCHALI, but he portrays the character of Apu in a different film. And so he perhaps is being asked this, but he's not mentioning specifics of the film Apu Shansar. He's not mentioning it at all here specifically. So it's not like how should I put it? It's not like a sort of an overview of the entire trilogy writ large. But in fact, he's speaking from his experience as someone who felt the impact, or could feel, or could understand and appreciate the impact of the work PATHER, PANCHALI, the novel, and also the film adaptation of PATHER, PANCHALI. And so that's I would say the basis of his comments here, as well as his working relationship, professional and personal relationship with Satyajit Ray. So this is a wonderful, wonderful interview. And as I say, we will get to see more of Chatterjee maybe when we progress through the set, but we get his words here and his love and affection and admiration for the work of Ray, and also the way in which Ray's work really impacted the landscape and the cultural, the cultural conversation, in a manner of speaking. And discussions of rural life in Kolkata as well, and the rural and the urban. There's also this idea of modernity and past and present, and it's woven throughout the fabric of Ray's films. We get a sense of it, I think, very strongly in PATHER, PANCHALI, and that will, I dare say, continue on as we get to the other films in this set. So this is, I think, a very key theme throughout Ray's work. This, I think, and other points are touched on so elegantly, so beautifully in Chatterjee's words. So here is Sumitra Chatterjee's interview from 2013. It's approximately 7 minutes, so please check this out if you can. And then that's not all, because going here we have Shampa Shrivastava, and Shampa Shrivastava is being interviewed here, and says the following interview with Shampa Shrivastava, who plays young Durga in PATHER, PANCHALI, credited as Runki Banerjee, was produced by the Criterion Collection in 2015. So this is approximately 16 minutes. And yes, so Shampa Shrivastava here is being interviewed, and she plays the younger version of Durga that we meet in the opening moments of the film. There is another actor who plays an older Durga in say the second third from the film onwards, but uh, Shampa Shrivastava plays the younger Durga in the opening moments. So, and she mentions, and this interview is described as being playing my mother's daughter, because of course she mentions the real life mother-daughter relationship here. Karuna Banerjee, who is the matriarch mother figure of the film, and so this is a really great interview. It's great to see it again. Because she mentions here just how much of an effect Satyajit Ray had. Very charming, very charismatic. There's an interesting anecdotes about how Satyajit Ray would direct certain scenes, and also some discussion about her mother, Karuna Banerjee, very famous actor, and illustrious career, and incredibly intelligent, and incredibly soulful, and filled with a lot of tenderness. And that's shining through in the performance of the mother in this work. It's one of the key performances in this film, and it echoes throughout the trilogy in many ways that we'll leave it at that. We'll discuss it further in the second film and beyond. But there's also a discussion here with how the name Runki came to be in terms of her being credited, the young girl being credited as Runki Banerjee in the credits, as it's noted in the notes here. So that's an interesting anecdote as well. And it also goes to show some aspects of sort of cultural aspects about naming conventions within the household and then outside the household. And then also how that didn't deter Satyajit Ray from choosing a name which he felt had a sense of affection and a kind of closeness, which he felt was very apropos of the situation. So it's a really heartwarming anecdote, one of many that I think are being shared here. So Shampa Shrivastava has some wonderful insight into the making of PATHER PANCHALI, the scenes that she was participating in. Some moments or some brief comments, not so many, but some brief comments about the actor who played the Durga in later years, Uma Dasgupta, and also just little things too about details and about the nose studs. There's some interesting anecdotes that she reveals about the nose studs. Also, the smell of tobacco in the air. There's an interesting anecdote about that. And also working with the elderly auntie character, etc. So, and also how this film, and then going back to Chatterjee's comments from the previous interview, just going back to how the story of PATHER PANCHALI was a really important story in terms of, among other things, according to her, among other things, capturing a sense of the Bengali style and culture, which is, I think, very much apropos here. So another wonderful interview. This was, as I mentioned, approximately 16 minutes. So please check this out if you can. It's really worth it. And then we have the interview with Somendu Roy, who is described here as Somendu Roy first worked with Satyajit Ray as attendant to the 35mm Mitchell camera the director had rented to shoot PATHER PANCHALI. In later years, he would become one of Ray's main camera operators. In the following interview, produced for the Criterion Collection in 2013, Roy shares his observations on Ray's direction and recalls the production of his debut film, that debut film being PATHER PANCHALI. So this discussion with Somendu Roy is approximately 12 minutes. This is another great one. Just talking about the location of the shooting, the Boral village, and also the way in which natural or actual elements were used. Described here, actual lighting, actual rain, natural settings were used to great effect. And as I was trying to mention earlier, I don't know if my words were effective. I apologize, but I was trying to, again, emphasize the point which I think Sminder Roy mentions here so greatly, which is the idea of the use of the elements as a way to pay respect to the environment, the village life, rural Bengal village life here, Borao, on the one hand, but also using that in moments of cinematic, poetic punctuation, which I think is very much also part of the case, and it's reflected too in how a lot of the camera work and the cinematography was being operated here, with the great contribution of Roy and also the cinematographer Subhatra Mitra. So a lot here. There's a lot here. There's also this idea of discussion about how there were struggles and difficulties about raising the funds to make the film, and so Roy just mentioned a little bit about that here. There's also a lovely comment here, the way in which he refers to Satyajit Ray, the relationship, the sort of big brother relationship, the word manita. So that I think was also very lovely indeed. And also some discussion too briefly about the source novel Bibhutishan Bonaparte, Bibhutishan Banerjee novel here, which forms the basis of PANCHALI, the film. So this is another great one. So please check this out if you can. As mentioned, yes, it's approximately 12 minutes. So please check this out if you can. Then we have, yes, last but not least, Ravi Shankar. And this is in these excerpts from the 2003 documentary, The Song of the Little Road, produced and directed by Priyanka Kumar. Musician Ravi Shankar recalls his experiences working with director Satyajit Ray as composer for the Apu trilogy. This is approximately 6 minutes. So he mentions about the sort of the again, the independent spirit in which this film was made. So it's one of the ultimate independent films, PANCHALI, and also just coming with this work, and then how the theme just seemed to emerge, which is this really wonderful, magical, for me, this just utterly impressive way that artists like Ravi Shankar and musicians like Ravi Shankar were there. There are those anecdotes where the theme just appears, and it's just wonderful to hear this, because the music is, as I say, one of those iconic works in all of cinema. I mean, this is one of the most famous themes ever. One of the most famous themes ever. And it acts, and the many themes as well, they act as a type of echo or leitmotif or conceit throughout, not just this one, but throughout the entirety of the lives of these people. Not to mention the trilogy itself in cinematic feature film terms. So, so again, this is very brief. It's only about 6 minutes, and these are excerpted from a different, separate documentary, not made available with this. So, please check this out if you can. Again, some insight into the workings of Ravi Shankar, who also mentions the sort of musical background, not only of himself, but also musical background experiences of Satyajit Ray, who then is reminding us of just how multifaceted these talents are, both Ravi Shankar and also Satyajit Ray. So well done indeed. So please check this out if you can. It's, these are excerpts, and we get to hear the voice, and it's interspersed with shots that are like still photographs of Ravi Shankar. So, maybe one can consider it more like excerpts that are like an audio excerpted interview with images to support. But this is that doesn't make it any less great. It's still really wonderful indeed. It's absolutely wonderful. So please check this out if you can. And that rounds out the supplements, at least with respect to PANCHALI. So maybe if I were to add a couple things, maybe it would have been nice. It would have been nice if there could have been some additional supplements to commemorate this 2024 release. It does happen, right, where Criterion releases something on the 4K format of a title that already exists in a previous Blu-ray from several years back, for instance. So more often than not, we'll find that Criterion doesn't necessarily add anything new in terms of supplements, etc. So I think the reason for that is because the Blu-ray is being carried over. And in fact, this is the Blu-ray. My understanding, this is the Blu-ray that's being carried over. So, would it be nice to get some new supplements? Of course, absolutely. It would be great every time. But for one reason or another, maybe it's not possible. Maybe it's beyond the logistics of this type of re-release. I'm not in the office, so I'm not sure. But I can speak from a consumer standpoint. So the fact that we don't get any new supplements might be a negative to some, and that might be less of a reason to want to say, open the wallet and pay the money. You get this 4K UHD box set version of this. And if you feel that way, I completely understand. That's totally okay. But remember, what we get here is really quite extraordinary, and what we had underlying, I think, is superb. Maybe if I had to just say two more things, which would be, it would be really great to get a discussion here of the underlying novel. To give it, I always love it when Criterion gives us further context in terms of the underlying source material. It doesn't do it all the time, but whenever it does, it really is quite a really eye-opening experience indeed. So I always appreciate when that happens, even if it's a profile or an overview. That alone is definitely worth it to me. So that would have been nice if that were added in the context of PATHER. Also, it would have been nice if there was maybe an additional commentary track. I think commentary tracks are always very valuable, and I mean, some commentary tracks are better than others, I grant you that, but those are just digging into the specifics of the work, especially work like PANCHALI, which really, it's all about those little details that just come and go, just like daily routines in one's life, So to be able to capture those in a commentary form, that would have been really fantastic. But oh well. That shouldn't take away, or I hope that doesn't take away from the overall experience of what we're getting already. And I'm trying to emphasize with the fact that what we already had, which is what we still have now, is absolutely splendid and eye-opening experience. So please consider this when thinking about getting this or not. And then if you do, please explore these wonderful supplements which are part of the set, this part being PANCHALI. And so let me conclude by saying that I will speak more about the essay, and I'll speak more about the packaging and the box set in a separate video, an overview video after I've discussed all the other films. But just note that the booklet does mirror what we got in the previous Blu-ray set. Right here. So we're getting this booklet as part of the set overall, and it doesn't necessarily have it doesn't have essays that are specific to PANCHALI, but it does have some components that are specific to PANCHALI. So it does have a page here that is devoted to the cast and crew breakdown of PANCHALI, plus a very picture that is a shot from the film that is a very memorable moment of the film, and then as well as corresponding pages to the other two films. And then it has one of the overarching essays, which we'll talk about, the Terence Rafferty essay, which has some elements about PANCHALI, but also about the other films. And then there's the Ray storyboards for PANCHALI section, starting on pages 16 and 17 in terms of PANCHALI specific moments. But we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about the booklet overall. But just know that there are some PANCHALI specific moments here, but it's more or less a general overview, or I'm sorry, it's more or less a booklet that is focusing in on, in terms of the writing, the trilogy overall, but making obviously specific references to the films respectively. And that also is true for the Behind the Universal essay, which I referred to briefly in the general discussion. So that's also maybe an overview type of essay structure. But so apart from the storyboard section, which could be said to be PANCHALI specific, the other two essays they do touch upon PANCHALI, but they also touch upon the other films. So we'll speak about the booklet overall in our separate video discussion that will end this video discussion line. But now, just to conclude, I've just been all over the place. I think I apologize for my meandering nature of speaking. But I just hope that maybe amongst that I've been able to convey just how important and how moving and how how resolute I am in my feelings about this. I think this is one of the most amazing experiences, and it is so because it is so direct, but it's direct, but using moments in time and culture and the land and the earth that is so very much part of this the Bengal landscape that is so inherent in the story, while at the same time being so accessible. And as I say, as I get older and older and older and older, as the years, many years pass, from when I first saw this film to now, I find myself looking at it through different perspectives, different points of view, but always coming back to the same feeling, which is being so moved and drawn towards these lives and feeling the same little frustrations and the same reactions to the microaggressions and the ways of life and the bursts of joy and the laughter and the moments of realization and the catharsis, but also the moments of growing up and adolescence and touching upon feelings and yearnings in the realm of adulthood and the mysteries, as well as the pride and joys and delicacies and grace and nobility of the family life and all the ups and downs and everything in between. It feels so close and so rich and so there. And I also know it's sharing things about the lives of these people, of these characters, that on the one hand are so far away and so distant from me, both in terms of time and space, but at the same time, watching film like this makes me feel so close. What a miracle this is. This is the work from Satyajit Ray, which is PATHER, PANCHALI. So, my dear friends, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. So we will continue on with these discussions with the next film in this box set, the 4K UHD release from 2024, as well as continuing on with the other Criterion 2024 releases. So please, if you're interested, please continue to stop by this channel. I always enjoy seeing you here, my dear friends. So my dear friends, thank you so much, and until the next video, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including PATHER, PANCHALI, including other works in the Apu trilogy, including other works by Satyajit Ray, and beyond. And so until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.